Out of the way, it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers this evening. Our first speaker is Dr. Mansoor Al Jhdhami. He's the Assistant Director General of the Office for Conservation of the Environment at the Diwan of Royal Court and has been involved in Sooty Falcon research and conservation for over 10 years. Dr. Mansoor will be followed by Dr. McGrady, who is an avian ecologist with a special interest in birds of prey and has been working in Oman since the 1990s. Thank you both for giving up your time to speak with us all this evening. Dr. Mansoor, can I hand over to you to start tonight's presentations?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Olivia. And I would like to thank the Environmental Society of Oman for inviting me to give this talk about the Sooty Falcons in Oman. And today I'm going to present about the conservation, distribution, and breeding and migration of Sooty Falcons in Oman. First of all, I would like to introduce my organization, which is the Office for Conservation of the Environment at the Diwan of Royal Court. It was established in 1974, and it manages 5 nature reserves for wildlife conservation. And it conducts conservation projects and research in different parts of the country. And special focus is on the top threatened and endangered species in Oman, such as the Arabian leopard, Arabian oryx, Arabian tahar, the Sooty Falcons, Nubian ibex, Arabian gazelles, and sand gazelles, as well as other small projects. Just a small introduction about myself. I am an Omani wildlife biologist. I have a PhD in animal physiology from the University of Exeter, UK, and a bachelor degree in biology from Sultan Qaboos University, 2001. I'm currently the assistant DG and acting the DG at the Office for Conservation of the Environment. The office has more than 230 members of staff, with 40 have higher education. And our areas of operation are mainly in Muscat and Wusta and Dhofar region. So today's talk will be about the conservation efforts of Sooty Falcon, the efforts for conservation of Sooty Falcons in Oman, the distribution, both globally and in Oman, the breeding of Sooty Falcons in Oman, their migration from Oman to the African continent and wintering in Africa. So I would like to start by the efforts for conservation of Sooty Falcons in Oman. As everybody knows, the great support and interest by the late His Majesty Sultan Qaboos bin Said. We are blessed in this country to have that great support. And you can see in the picture in the 70s of the last century, the miniature of an oryx is on the table of His Majesty, which reflects the great support and interest in conserving wildlife. This book is The Birds of Oman. This is the Arabic version. It was published in 1985, and it was forwarded by His Majesty, the late Sultan Qaboos. And as I will show you, there's a statement, and he mentioned the Sooty Falcon by name. This is the English version by Michael Gallagher, and the artist was the Martin Woodcock. And His Majesty mentioned there's a quote by late His Majesty: "Some of the birds whose we see in Oman are residents, and some are visitors who seek food and shelter here while they pass on their long journeys to and from their breeding grounds. Yet others, like the Sooty Falcon, come here from places far away to raise their young in our country. All of them are of God's creation and by His grace given to us to cherish and to protect as part of our heritage. So such statement reflects the knowledge of His Majesty and the great support of His Majesty for conservation, not just for, conservation for birds. And the support also continues in the new rule of His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq, and the new vision to 2040 focuses on the environment is one of the major themes, one of the four major themes in the vision, Oman Vision 2040, and the support for conservation of wildlife continues. Adding to that, Oman has established a lot of protected areas, and for Sooty Falcon, we are the main habitat that are strongholds for Sooty Falcon in Oman are the Dimaniyat Islands Nature Reserve, that's under the Environmental Authority, established by a royal decree, and the Fahal Island, this is protected by Royal Oman Police because it's near the Fahal port. So those two areas, these are the Dimaniyat Islands, and these the Fahal Islands. They occur in the Sea of Oman. And also, Oman has issued a lot of legislations, laws, royal decrees in protection of environment and wildlife conservation. And for enforcement of the law, there are organizations that manage those protected areas and rangers who patrol to safeguard the wildlife in the country. Also, in Oman, we had done a lot of research related to conserving Sooty Falcon, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So the research started early in the 70s. The government sponsored a detailed field study by Dr. Hartmut Walter about the breeding populations in Oman, and he published his results in the Journal of Oman Studies in 1978. And 30 years after that, the Office for Conservation of the Environment welcomed a major field study that continued for 8 years and intensive field surveys for the breeding populations in Oman that involved local and international organizations and experts. And that resulted in the publication of several research articles in peer-reviewed journals. And these are some examples. And here are the core research team for Sooty Falcon during one of the, and Zahrani is holding one Sooty Falcon with the satellite tracking device. The distribution of Sooty Falcons. Sooty Falcons are found in two major areas, the breeding areas that are marked by the dark color, and the wintering grounds, which are the lighter color, mainly in African continent. And also they migrate and back and forth to wintering ground and breeding grounds. The distribution of Sooty Falcon in Oman, we know that they are located in Fahal Island and Dimaniyat Island, but we had there were no records of Sooty Falcon for many years in Musandam. So we decided to have an extensive survey of Sooty Falcons in Musandam, and we had a boat survey along the whole coast of Musandam in 2014 by a rubber boat, and we surveyed with the support of Royal Yachts. Of course, without their support, we would not have possible to conduct this research. They supported us also in Dimaniyat Islands and Fahal Islands, and without their support, this project would not have been possible. These are the route of surveys in Musandam that we had. So we covered the whole areas in Musandam, as you see in the blue color or purple color, from Khasab to all the way to Daba. But unfortunately, we didn't see any Sooty Falcon during that survey. So our study in the past, it was confirmed in Musandam, but our study showed that maybe it's not any longer confirmed in Musandam. So the distribution of Sooty Falcons probably declined in Oman. Now I'm going to talk about the breeding of Sooty Falcon in Oman. So they arrive in Oman around May, and they choose a territory to nest, and they lay the eggs. The mean clutch size of their nest is 2.83. That's based on surveying 153 nests in both Dimaniyat and Fahal Islands. And each nest has 1 to 4 eggs. The brood size, the hatching of those eggs, the overall is 2.11. That's from surveying 226 nests over 8 years. So that's the conclusion of 8 years study about breeding and reproduction of Sooty Falcons. So those chicks, when they become, when they grow, they fledge around the 5th of October, and they feed mainly on migratory small to medium-sized passerine birds and shore and marine birds as well. The population dynamics of Sooty Falcon in Oman, the annual asymptotic population growth rate is 0.87. The survival of juvenile birds is lower than that of adults. The cohort generation time is 5.9 years. And the life expectancy at hatching is 2.5 years. So our results suggest that only about 12% of fledglings survive to the average age of first breeding, which is the 3.8 years. And the Sooty Falcons have 100% fidelity to their breeding site. The conclusion from our study is that the population in Oman is declining, and the IUCN threatened the conservation status of Sooty Falcons. For Sooty Falcons is changed from near threatened to vulnerable based on this study. Also, we did studies on the migration of Sooty Falcons. The migration starts roughly in October, late October to early November. So we tracked 11 Sooty Falcons by fitting BTTs, or the tracking devices. We tracked 4 adults and 6 juveniles that were captured in Oman, and we also captured one in Madagascar, as I will talk about this. So this is how the juvenile looks with the satellite tracking device. And as you see here, the migration of Sooty Falcons, starting from Fahal or Dimaniyat Islands from Oman, they cross the Arabian Peninsula and the Red Sea, or the Arabian Sea, and they cross the African continent, and they go to the eastern part of Africa, and they cross the Mozambique Strait, and then they end up in the eastern south and southwestern part of Madagascar. And we had some birds returned to Oman the following year. So they cross more than 7,000 kilometers from Oman to Madagascar. And we noticed roughly that the juveniles, they take a longer route. They have their migration route is like a curved route, while the adults with those lines, straight lines, they do the migration more straight than the juveniles. So we wrote a report about the tracking of Sooty Falcons in the Argus magazine, which is the French satellite company for tracking of wildlife. And the Sooty Falcons winter in Africa. The wintering timing is between November and April, and they feed mainly on insects, and mainly dragonflies and locusts and grasshoppers. And most of their time they spend on feeding and roosting on trees. And they are threatened by the loss of forest habitat, and probably by the pesticides used in agriculture, as there are a lot of farms and agriculture activities. And as I mentioned, they are concentrated in south and southwestern Madagascar. So we had visits to Madagascar, and this is Morandab. It's called the Baobab Alley area, and that time in around February, it's raining. You see here, and they spend most of their times on Baobab Alley, on the Baobab trees, roosting, and they are found in large numbers in each tree. We found some trees, they number around 27 individuals just in one tree. So they concentrate in that area, and they favor baobab trees and eucalyptus trees as well. And we also met with people and talked about, informed them about the Sooty Falcon and its migration from the breeding areas to their areas. And some of them, they have lack of knowledge. They noticed their disappearance in some parts of the year, and some of them think they hide inside the trunks of trees. They don't know that they migrate. So they are, we informed them about their migration, and we are doing the tracking work. And also we presented lectures at the University of Antananarivo, capital of Madagascar, about the project. And also we joined the activities by the Scout that was arranged by this is Professor Lily Harrison. His work under the Peregrine Fund, and they study a lot of raptors in Madagascar, and they hosted an event for us by the Scouts in the capital of Madagascar. We'd like to thank them for the hospitality and all the kind support they provided to us. This is the airport of Tana, or the capital of Madagascar. This is the manager of the airport who allowed us to capture Sooty Falcons. So we captured 2 Sooty Falcons from the trees. This is Morris, who climbed the trees and put nest nets, and we were able to capture the Sooty Falcons, and we fitted them with the tag with the satellite tracking device. So also people gathered and we informed them about the Sooty Falcon and the importance of its conservation. We also published in 2016 a documentary film about the Sooty Falcons in 4 languages: Arabic, English, French, and German. And it was awarded the best documentary movie in the Muscat International Film Festival in 2018. And it was screened and broadcasted locally and internationally. And it's available for streaming the full movie in 4 languages at this link. Thank you for listening, and before I end, I would like to thank first of all His Majesty the late Sultan Qaboos for the great support to this project, and His Excellency the Minister of the Diwan, and the former Director Generals of the Office, Dr. Mohammed Leblouchi, and Mr. Yasser Salami. Dr. Michael McGrady is the main researcher in this project, and the team who contributed from the Office for Conservation, both scientists and administration and finance staff. Special thanks to Royal Yachts and the Ministry of Environment, currently the Environmental Authority, Sultan Qaboos University, and the Peregrine Fund in Madagascar. And special thanks to Mr. Wahid and to all those who contributed to this project. And thank you for listening.
Mansoor, thank you for that very informative presentation. I'll just remind everyone that we will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of tonight's presentations, and you should feel free to put your questions in the chat box at any point. But if I can now pass over to Dr. Mike McGrady for his presentation. The floor is yours, Dr. Mike.
Okay, hello everybody. Let me get everything going here. Oops, get back up. Good evening. I will basically take off from where Mansoor left off and get some things started. I'm going to be talking about some other projects that we've been involved in related to birds of prey in Oman, and particularly things that we've been working on recently with endangered vultures and eagles in the Sultanate. Like Mansoor, really we owe all this information and stuff to really a partnership of many organizations, many individuals who provide everything from a good breakfast in the morning to boats and funding sometimes. So I'm just a reporter of what a lot of other people have done, rather than this isn't my story. It's a story about lots of different people and organizations. Oman is a global stronghold for raptors, and as you heard before, they were, I think it was said 39 raptors, but that really didn't include everything that comes and goes, because some of the raptors are migratory. And then, of course, there's the nighttime raptors, the owls. So you have basically two types of raptors. One, diurnal raptors, the ones that occur during the day, and the nocturnal ones, the owls. And of all the diurnal species, the birds that are out during the daytime, 28 of them are kind of regularly seen in Oman. I mean, you could go out, if you're in Oman, you could go out and see quite a few of these with a minimum amount of effort. But of all those ones that are regularly seen in Oman, quite a few of them are under threat from in terms of their conservation. So 3 of those species are globally endangered. 3 are vulnerable, like the Sooty Falcon that Mansoor was talking about, and 2 are classified as near threatened. And the reasons why, first of all, that we have lots of raptors in Oman and that it's a stronghold for these is, first of all, the country is quite big and it's also diverse. So you've got, up near Muscat, the environment is a lot like, really more like India. You've got the mountains of the Hajar Mountains, going up Jebel Shams. Then you've got the stony desert in the middle, or the sands, the empty quarter. And then down in the south is, down near Salalah, it's really a little piece of Africa. So you've got this real diversity that can support a lot of different species. And within that, Oman is a relatively safe place. Relatively few people live there. Hunting and falconry are not as traditionally pursued or with such vigor as in other Arabian countries. So it's generally safer for these birds. So the main aim of all these raptor projects, both the Sooty Falcon project and all the projects I'll talk about, is that we want to learn more about the biology and ecology of these birds and their status in Oman. Are they doing well? Are they doing poorly? What is their status? And of course, we want to promote conservation in any case. We want to reduce any risks they face in Oman. We want to raise public awareness. We want to build local capacity, because Oman is a young country still and hasn't really developed a full cadre of biologists that can do all this work themselves and apply field methods to study the birds. And then we want to provide information to Omani government and non-governmental agencies so that they can promote conservation, because research is just one part of conservation. There are these other things, public education, habitat protection, things like that. There's the main 4 projects that have gone on about raptors in recent years in Oman. Has been the Sooty Falcon, the one that Mansoor talked about. Then we've been working also on Egyptian vulture, steppe eagle, and lapid-faced vulture. And these are pictures of this guy up here is an Egyptian vulture. Here's the Sooty Falcons. Mansoor showed you some pictures when they're a little bit older. This is a lapid-faced vulture. This is the biggest bird resident to Arabia. And this is a steppe eagle. The guy with the hat is not the steppe eagle. That's one of the ranges of the OCE. Starting off with the Egyptian vultures, I'm going to present these first, each one of these in terms of what we knew about them before we started, and then what we found out. So the Egyptian vultures, what we knew is that they're scavengers. They feed off of small bits of carrion and rubbish and pieces of all sorts of things, even small insects sometimes, and they're often associated with humans. They're in former times, before there was so much urbanization, they were found in lots of the villages. You'd have a pair in every village, kind of cleaning up the mess of goats and people in these villages. Nowadays, they're globally endangered, and the populations have taken a swift dive, much like many of the vulture populations in the old world. And we've lost 60% of the Egyptian vultures in the last 40 years. So this huge decline. And there are species that part of the population migrates. So they occur as far north as say Bulgaria and Turkey and the Caucasus, and those birds will migrate. But the ones that are farther south don't. So you have parts of the population that are migratory and parts that are not. They face a whole variety of threats like any of the raptors, but the ones that are probably most important are secondary poisoning, where people have put out poison to kill hyenas or foxes or wolves, and the vultures come down to these and eat them and die. The NSAID drugs, this is a whole nother topic which I'll just touch on lightly at the end, but these are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs which have actually brought vulture populations to their knees in Europe and Asia. I mean, some of these populations have lost more than 80% of their individuals over the last 3 generations. Electrocution is a problem. Again, I'll touch on this later, but then also their food is changing. You know this from Oman. You know, Oman in 1970, you had very few people and subsistence living, people living in villages, and there was probably less rubbish thrown out. And the rubbish was distributed across the villages rather than concentrated in places like Muscat and Salalah and things like that. So what have we learned in Oman since we've done this work? First of all, we found out that there's globally large numbers of Egyptian vultures using the waste disposal sites in Oman. If you look at this picture to the right, these are all Egyptian vultures flying around. And on a good day at the landfill that services Muscat, you can see 400, 500 Egyptian vultures. That may not sound very much to you, but that's more than exists in all of Eastern Europe. So Oman, in one little landfill for one city, has more birds visiting it than all of Eastern Europe. Most of Egyptian vultures in Oman appear to be resident. They don't go anywhere. That was a surprise to us. When we first saw these big numbers, we thought, oh, they must be coming from someplace else. But what we found out is actually they're from Oman. So Oman is actually it turned out to be a real stronghold for breeding Egyptian vultures. So much so that when we did surveys on Mansour, we found it to be the second densest population ever recorded, next to islands on Socotra. So Mansour has kind of moved up as an important site for globally endangered Egyptian vultures. We've tracked these birds, and I'll go through that pretty soon, that these territorial birds often travel 50, 60 kilometers to visit these dump sites and feed at them. And then we found that some of the birds that we have tracked, and other birds, of course, get electrocuted. And you can see down here, this is an Egyptian vulture that we were tracking, and it probably landed up here on the transformer, grounded itself, and was electrocuted and died. The next two slides will be animations of some tracked birds. Now, the things to pay attention, there are two types of birds. Ones that basically settle down really closely to their where we caught them, and another that moved. This is a bird that moved. The main thing to do is to watch the time scale up here. And here's Muscat down here, Musandam, Iran, and you'll see, well, starting in January 2018. Here we go. There we go. It's May 2018. And this bird now has settled and not started to breed, but settled on Keshem Island in Iran. And now, here 2019, this bird now has settled and become a breeder. And you can see he's just staying in one place pretty much until the winter when he can move away. And then he goes back. Okay. In contrast, some of the other birds, this is similar setup. Here's the day. Muscat is up here just off camera, and Kuriat is over here. So this is going down the main road from Muscat to Kuriat, and here we go. And here's the rubbish dump. Here's the landfill at Al-Mutaka. Watch how many times that bird goes there. There he goes. There he goes. Okay, you get the picture. The next species I want to talk about is steppe eagles. First of all, what did we know? First of all, back when I was in high school, these were the most common large eagle in the world. They're migratory. They breed in Central Asia, but they come down in the winter to India, Pakistan, Arabia, and Africa. However, although they were very common when I was young, they've seen over a 65% decline in the population in the last 40 years. They've plummeted. In the summer, it feeds on small mammals and on their breeding grounds, but in the winter, they become more like vultures and feed a lot on carrion. Threats, as you'll see, some of these are similar to what we saw with the Egyptian vulture: habitat loss, wildfires, electrocution again, poisoning, these NSAIDs, and shooting. What have we learned? What have we learned since we've been studying them in Oman? First of all, globally, huge numbers come to Oman. These are, as their status implies, they're endangered. And at Reisut, down in Salalah, we were able to count at sometimes over 2,000 eagles there on a day in the winter. Our tracking led us to find another site in Saudi Arabia where 6,000 eagles were spending the winter. I mean, I didn't get to go see this site, but I can't imagine what 6,000 eagles all in one place looks like. Oman birds, some are mostly in Kazakhstan, as I said. Kazakhstan is the breeding stronghold for this species. And although you see them around Muscat, they're much more common in Dhofar, around Salalah. And the waste management practices are affecting them. How much waste is there? What's happening to the waste? Where is it going? Are all affecting them. And of course, sadly, electrocutions occur also in Oman. Again, I'm going to entertain you with a little animation. And here, okay, here's Salalah. We caught birds down here, and you'll see they'll start to migrate. And over time, some of them die or their tags stop working. And you'll see they choose different places to spend their winter. So we're going to start January 2019 and go to earlier this spring. Let's see. And this is, how many of this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11 birds. Here we go. There we go. Leaving Salalah, sort of wandering around. Now they're going. And you can see they're going to western Kazakhstan, most of them, and breeding, or some of these were young birds, so they weren't breeding in this first year. And then in the autumn, they move back down, some to Salalah, and then some start finding other places into. You can see in the center here, that's that 6,000 eagles site right there. Now we're in 2020, and they're up in the summer, and then around August, they'll start moving down. There we go. The final species I want to talk to is a species that we're really just starting our research on. This is globally endangered species. It's the lappet-faced vulture. It's the largest resident bird in Arabia, and these birds can weigh, I don't know, 9 kilos, 8 kilos, and have a wingspan of 2.5 meters. They breed in Oman, and up until recently, we knew of about 10 breeding records. They occasionally come to the waste disposal sites, but they really, with that big beak, they specialize on dead animals, camels or goats or things like that. They're endangered, and their threats include this change in food. They get poisoned, and again, big birds get electrocuted. As you can see, this is a very recent 16th of March. This is a site down near Mudebi. They're probably more common than we thought. So with this research that we've started, we've already found more than 20 nesting areas, many of them with breeding birds. However, we know that they're persecuted. The people take birds out of the nest. They throw stones into the nest and crush the eggs and the young. They shoot them, and they're also electrocuted. That's all kind of the research, but there's a lot of other things that are going on about raptors. First, and I'll kind of take these pictures they kind of remind me of everything that's going on. Certainly, we've got this capacity building. Here's a OCE ranger doing counts down in Resut at the rubbish dump down there, where they come up after making the counts. We analyze the data. We're analyzing how birds move relative to the electrical network. Trying to get our handle on electrocution. We're working with the waste management company to perhaps set up what are so-called vulture restaurants to provide safe food for scavenging birds. And of course, the public education side of things. Not only the production of the booklet that was mentioned early on, but also sometimes when I've been out working, I encounter these school groups out there, and I get onto their bus and we talk about raptors. They're incredibly knowledgeable, these kids. And now over here, this dark thing reminds me about the story about NSAIDs, these drugs that are poisoning both eagles and vultures. And here's a quick summary of the NSAIDs. The worst of these, or at least the one we know most about, is one called diclofenac. And it's amongst this group of drugs given to animals to alleviate pain and inflammation. It's a very effective drug. It works very well, but the problem is it also poisons vultures and eagles. And while we were doing our steppe eagle work, we walked into a pharmacy and found there was diclofenac on sale. And we were able then to work with the Ministry of Agriculture. And as a result, in 2020, Oman became the first Arabian Peninsula country to ban veterinary diclofenac. This is a really big step and forward in terms of conserving scavenging birds. And with that, I'll close and I can answer questions if there's any time. How's that?